My wife cheated on me in my own house, so I crafted a perfect revenge plan and reclaimed my life and found true love. I had always believed that my home was my sanctuary, a place where trust, love, and loyalty resided. For over a decade, I had built my life around my wife, Sarah, and the dreams we shared. We worked together to create a beautiful life, and I prided myself on our bond. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the moment I discovered that sanctuary was about to be violated. It was a chilly evening when I returned home earlier than expected from a business trip. My mind was preoccupied with work, and I longed for the comfort of our familiar routine. As I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet living room, an unsettling stillness gripped me, a silence that felt too deliberate, too heavy. The house, usually filled with warmth and the comforting hum of everyday life, was eerily quiet. I set my briefcase down and made my way toward the living room, expecting to greet Sarah after a long day. That's when I saw it. In the soft glow of the lamp, Sarah was not alone. She was sitting on our plush sofa, her back turned to the door, but the unmistakable closeness of another man couldn't be ignored. My heart pounded as I watched the scene unfold. The stranger, a man I'd never seen before, sat beside her, his hand resting casually on her knee. A gesture that was intimate and far too familiar for my taste. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. I stood rooted to the spot, grappling with disbelief as I tried to process the scene before me. I could feel a mix of shock, anger, and an overwhelming sadness. Every memory of our shared life, every promise we had made to each other, flashed before my eyes. The man, someone from her business world, a partner perhaps, had invaded our home, our sacred space, and shattered the illusion of our perfect life. Without thinking, I reached for my phone and discreetly began taking photos, documenting every detail of that painful moment. I knew that evidence was vital, not just for my own sense of validation, but to confront the situation with undeniable truth. I retreated into the shadows of the hallway, my mind racing, while my heart screamed in agony. The betrayal was more than just infidelity, it was a violation of everything I had trusted and believed in. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah noticed movement near the door. Her eyes widened, and for a fleeting second, I saw panic flicker across her face before she attempted to compose herself. The stranger stood abruptly, an awkward tension filling the room. I heard fragments of hurried words, but they were drowned out by the pounding of my heart. In that moment, I realized that the comfortable life we had built was irreparably broken. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze, the images of that night replaying over and over in my mind. The house, which had once symbolized our unity and love, now felt like a prison of betrayal. I didn't confront them immediately. I needed time to gather my thoughts and plan my next steps. The hurt and anger were seething inside me, and as the hours passed, a clear resolve began to form. I vowed that I would not allow this violation to define me, and that I would craft a plan to reclaim my dignity. In the solitude of the night, while the city slept and the memories of betrayal churned in my mind, I began plotting my revenge. I recalled every detail, every whispered conversation, every intimate gesture, knowing that I would use this evidence to confront not only Sarah but also the man who had dared to invade my life. I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with pain, but it was a necessary path toward restoring the respect I had lost. That night, with my heart heavy yet resolute, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not be a victim of deceit. I would turn this personal tragedy into a turning point, one that would ultimately lead me to a new beginning and, perhaps, even a true love that honored the trust and loyalty I deserved. In the days that followed that devastating night, I found myself drifting between the raw pain of betrayal and an unyielding determination to reclaim my self-respect. I locked myself away in our study, turning the quiet hours into a battleground of emotions and plans. While the images of that night haunted my every thought, a clear resolve began to emerge. I was not going to be the victim in this story. I was going to craft the perfect revenge. The first step was gathering evidence. I meticulously compiled every photo, every text message, and every detail that had confirmed Sarah's betrayal. Every whispered word, every secret glance captured on my phone became ammunition in my arsenal. I knew that the truth was my most potent weapon, one that could shatter the illusions she'd built around herself and force her to face the consequences of her actions. Once I had my evidence in order, I turned my attention to planning my next move. I needed a strategy that would not only hurt her pride but also make her understand the gravity of what she had done. I began by mapping out our daily routines, identifying the moments when I could strike without alerting her. I studied her habits and the little details that had always seemed trivial but now took on a whole new significance. Every secret meeting, every late-night phone call, Every evasive answer she had given me was laid bare before my eyes. In a quiet corner of my study, with the hum of the city in the background, I started to write. I drafted letters, ones that I would send to her closest friends, her business partners, and even her family, detailing the extent of her betrayal. I was careful, though. I wasn't out to ruin her life entirely, but to expose her hypocrisy and force her to confront the consequences of her choices. Every word was chosen meticulously, designed to hit her where it would hurt most, in her pride and her sense of self. At the same time, I set up a series of accidental encounters. I reached out to people who knew her well, planting subtle hints about the truth. I arranged for a few discreet meetings with mutual friends, during which I casually mentioned my discovery, ensuring that whispers of her indiscretions began to circulate. It wasn't about public humiliation. I wanted her to face the full impact of the betrayal within her inner circle, where the damage to her reputation would be most profound. During these days, I found solace in the anonymity of my planning. Each keystroke, each note, each strategic decision was a step towards reclaiming the dignity I had lost. I wasn't fueled by anger alone. A part of me sought a form of poetic justice, a way to turn my pain into a lesson that she would never forget. Of course, revenge is a double-edged sword, and as I plotted, I couldn't help but reflect on the man I was becoming. Was this act of retribution truly for her, or was it a cry for help, a desperate attempt to heal my own wounded pride? I spent hours debating with myself, weighing the benefits of closure against the potential for further heartache. In the solitude of my study, I made a promise: no matter how bitter the truth, I would emerge from this with my head held high. By the time the plan was fully formed, a quiet determination had settled within me. I was ready to execute every detail, confident that when the moment came, the perfect storm of truth and retribution would wash over her world. I felt a sense of liberation in knowing that I was in control for the first time since that fateful night. As I closed my notebook, the final plan laid out before me, I took a deep breath and looked out the window. The darkness of the night was punctuated by the distant glow of streetlights, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, there is light. I knew that the path I was about to take would be painful, not just for her, but for me as well. Yet, it was a necessary step in my journey toward reclaiming my life. With my evidence secure and my revenge plan in place, I steeled myself for what was to come. I was ready to expose her duplicity, to force her to confront the betrayal head-on, and ultimately, to pave the way for a future where I could finally move on and find true happiness. The day I decided to execute my plan arrived with an eerie calm, a deceptive tranquility that belied the storm raging within me. I began the morning by meticulously reviewing every piece of evidence, the photos, the messages, and even the video clips I had secretly recorded. Each file was a silent witness to the betrayal that had shattered my trust. I knew that my next moves had to be both calculated and irreversible. I started by sending carefully crafted letters to those who mattered most in Sarah's life. I wrote to her closest friends, her business associates, and even her family, laying out the cold, hard facts of her indiscretion. Every word was chosen to be both piercing and honest. I included screenshots of her secret texts and photographs that captured the intimate moments with her lover. I wasn't looking for public humiliation for its own sake. My goal was to force her to confront the consequences of her actions within the very circles where she prided herself on her impeccable reputation. Later that day, I arranged a series of accidental encounters with mutual friends. In a carefully orchestrated dinner at a favorite local restaurant, I casually mentioned the evidence I had uncovered, letting the truth spill out like an unstoppable tide. The shock on their faces was immediate. Whispers and side glances confirmed that the scandal was swiftly becoming common knowledge. I wasn't just seeking retribution, I was reclaiming my narrative, ensuring that the truth would no longer be hidden behind lies and deceit. Meanwhile, Sarah began to feel the pressure of isolation. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from confused friends and family members who now questioned her every word. At work, the cold stares of colleagues and the hushed murmurs in the hallways made it clear that her personal life had become public fodder. The carefully constructed facade she had maintained for years was crumbling rapidly. As the day turned to evening, I took one final step in executing my plan. I arranged for a private meeting with Sarah, a meeting under the pretext of discussing our strained relationship. When she arrived at the cafe, her eyes held a mixture of trepidation and desperation. I sat across from her, my gaze steady and unyielding, and laid everything bare. "I know everything, Sarah," I said, my voice calm but laced with an edge of finality. "The letters, the evidence, the way everyone now sees the truth. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness or to mend what's irreparably broken. I'm here to tell you that the consequences of your choices are now on full display." Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to muster an explanation, but I continued, "I trusted you with my heart and my life, and you shattered that trust for a fleeting moment of passion. Now, you must face the reality that our marriage is over. I will not be your scapegoat or your safety net." That confrontation was the final blow. The air between us was thick with regret and unspoken sorrow as she pleaded for another chance. But I was resolute. My revenge was not born out of cruelty alone, but out of a desperate need to reclaim my dignity. Over the following days, the fallout was swift and severe. Sarah's reputation was tarnished in the eyes of those who once admired her, and she found herself isolated in a world where trust was paramount. Meanwhile, I felt a bittersweet liberation, a heavy yet necessary purge of the past. I had not resorted to impulsive violence or petty acts. Instead, I used truth as my weapon, exposing the betrayal for all to see. Each email sent, every whispered conversation at dinner, and every tearful confrontation was a step toward my healing. I wasn't driven solely by anger. I was driven by a need to rebuild, to transform the pain into something empowering. And as the shock of the revelations settled in the community, I began to see the path ahead with newfound clarity. In that moment of executing my revenge, I recognized that reclaiming my life meant more than merely punishing Sarah. It meant breaking free from the shadows of deceit and forging a future where I was valued and respected. The day was long gone when I felt like a victim. Instead, I was emerging as someone who had taken back control, determined to move forward and find a love that was true, honest, and free of betrayal. In the weeks and months that followed the final confrontation, life began to reshape itself in ways I had never imagined possible. The echo of betrayal that had once haunted every corner of my home gradually faded, replaced by a quiet promise of renewal. With Sarah's deception now laid bare for all to see, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders, a liberation born not from vengeance alone, but from the hard-won understanding that I deserved a life built on honesty and respect. The aftermath of my revenge plan was both cathartic and sobering. Friends and family, though initially shocked by the scandal, soon rallied around me. Their unwavering support helped me see that the pain I had endured did not define me. Instead, it was a stepping stone toward a future where I could finally reclaim my identity. I began to fill the void left by Sarah's betrayal with pursuits that once brought me joy, early morning runs that cleared my mind, painting classes that allowed me to express my emotions, and long, introspective walks in nature where each step felt like a move toward healing. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I sat in a quaint coffee shop that had become my retreat, I caught a glimpse of someone who would eventually change my life. She was seated by the window, absorbed in a book, her eyes occasionally glancing up to smile at the gentle drizzle outside. There was something serene about her, a quiet confidence that radiated warmth. I couldn't help but be drawn to her presence, feeling an inexplicable connection that I hadn't experienced in years. After several days of internal deliberation, I mustered the courage to approach her. Our conversation began with hesitant smiles and polite greetings, but it quickly evolved into a genuine dialogue about life, art, and the simple pleasures that make each day worthwhile. Her name was Emily, and in her, I saw the embodiment of resilience, a woman who had faced her own share of hardships and emerged with an unwavering spirit. As we talked, I felt the remnants of my old wounds begin to heal, replaced by a burgeoning hope for something new. Emily was a breath of fresh air. She listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and never once made me feel diminished by the scars of my past. Instead, she celebrated the journey that had brought me here, and in that celebration, I realized that true love wasn't about erasing the past. It was about embracing every part of it, the pain and the triumphs alike. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. With each shared laugh, each quiet moment of comfort, the bitterness of betrayal was replaced by a gentle, abiding warmth. I eventually found myself reflecting on the tumultuous events that had so irrevocably altered my life. The revenge I had so meticulously planned and executed had served its purpose. It had forced Sarah to confront her own failures, and it had freed me from the chains of lingering resentment. But more importantly, it had propelled me toward a new beginning, one where I could define my own happiness without being tethered to the mistakes of the past. As the seasons changed and the crispness of autumn gave way to the promise of winter, I knew that I was no longer the same man who had once been betrayed in his own home. I had transformed the agony of deception into a source of strength, a wellspring of resolve that now fueled every step of my journey forward. With Emily by my side, I began to explore a life rich in possibilities. Together, We planned quiet weekend getaways, explored art galleries, and even started a small project to help others heal from their own wounds of betrayal. In the end, I learned that true love is not something that can be forced or reclaimed from a broken past. It must be discovered anew, nurtured with honesty, and built on the firm foundation of self-respect. Today, as I stand at the dawn of this new chapter, I do so with a heart that has finally found peace and a love that promises to honor every lesson learned along the way.